Hi, my name is Santana. If you're new here, welcome to my channel for the first time. If you're not, welcome back. I make videos where I talk about things that I find interesting and I try to find some facts or knowledge to back up the things that I'm saying. Um, but today I wanted to talk about an experiment that I tried over the last week. So I am someone who struggles with body image, which I think is a pretty normal thing when we live in such a comparison-based society. I think it's really easy to get into negative headspaces about our bodies, but I didn't just want to sit with that negative emotion. I wanted to do something about it. I find it so much easier when to think about being kind to my own body when I think about the way that I feel about my friends and my loved ones' bodies and how I feel about strangers' bodies. And I'm not nearly as judgmental towards others as I am towards myself. So I kind of practiced a theory on that this week, and I mixed in a little bit of mindfulness to my normal people watching. I'm somebody who will sit and people watch if I'm bored or if I don't have anything else to do, or maybe if I'm waiting on a friend to arrive at a table at a restaurant or something like that. But this week, each time that I was people watching, I tried to pay attention to people's bodies, not in an uncomfortable way, an overly obvious way, or any kind of sexual way, but just as an observer of my environment. And something that really stuck out to me was just the amount of variation that there are in other people's bodies, bodies that aren't on social media or that aren't being perceived through social media, and how much kind of peace and acceptance that brought me, knowing that, like, yes, my body might look differently than other people's bodies, but there are different styles, shapes, and ways of being, and that all of them are beautiful in their own ways. But it took being really present and mindful of the people around me to kind of notice that. It took being active in my own mind to kind of push away that lack of self-acceptance and to usher in some self-acceptance and normalizing normal bodies. But I thought that it was really helpful, and I think it kind of coincides with the book that I've been reading this week, which is a book by Dr. Emily Morris, and I actually have it in front of myself, and it's called Smart Sex, and this book is kind of about how to improve your sex life, which is not necessarily something that I'm looking to do, but it was something that sparked my interest when I was in the library, and she brings up some really important topics to think about when you're thinking about improving your sex life or changing it or improving intimacy just generally. And she talks about like what our pleasure thieves are. And I think she means this from a standpoint of like relationship wise, like emotionally, but also physically. But it just really stuck out to me because the acronym she uses is STS, which is stress, trauma, shame. And I just thought it was kind of, really simple, but also so important to think about, that when we're not managing our stress, our trauma, and our shame, then we're going to have a harder time connecting with other people because we're kind of trapped inside of our own head and we're not being nice to ourselves. And it's hard to be nice and accepting of other people when we can't even do that for ourselves. And you're kind of, you kind of get stuck in this like catch 22, where it's like, being harder on yourself doesn't make it easier for you to be nice to yourself. I don't know if that really makes sense or if that phrase lined out the way that I wanted it to. But I think in order to combat internalized judgment, at least from my own perspective, it takes being present and mindful of other people in my life and taking a step outside of myself to recognize that, like, people aren't looking at me and judging me in the same ways that I'm judging myself. And I know that to be true because I'm not doing that to other people. When I sit and I people watch in a cafe, I'm not thinking about how awful or weird someone's body is, I'm thinking about the way that they smile and the way that they move with grace and kindness and how they're interacting with other people. Maybe the person is not being the kindest to the person at the counter. Maybe they're being really sweet. Maybe they're having a cute interaction with their kids or with their family. But when I'm watching other people in that kind of setting, I'm not judging them. I'm not saying, oh, well, they should be smaller, they should be bigger, or they should suck in their stomach, or they should not be wearing those pants, or they should change that shirt, or they're not worthy of love because of the way that their body looks. So by being active and mindful in that process, it kind of helped me to reframe and pull myself out of some negative thought patterns this week. Because I think it's easier to think about the way we treat ourselves when we think about the way that we treat other people. And this is really important to me just because I recently turned 27 and I feel like I've really been struggling in romance and love, and I can't really figure it out. But then I started to realize maybe I wasn't really trying, that I'm not putting myself out there in a genuine way to find a partner or to find a person, because I don't think I ever really learned how to do that. Of course, I've had partners, I've been intimate with other people. Like, I'm not a prude by any means. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a prude, but I definitely am not. But it seems like my connections are like fiery and then they sizzle out. And it's kind of starting to get tired and old, and it's not something that really brings me joy or makes me happy anymore. Not that I think it ever really did make me happy. I think it just brought me very brief relief and pleasure, but no like long-term happiness. And I would say that I'm a person who's really happy in a lot of ways in my life. I'm very thankful for my job and for my friends and for the place that I live and for the roof over my head and for all the things I have. I know that in the world we live in, that not everybody has those things. But I guess I'd say I'm unlucky when it comes to love. So I'm trying to take it out of luck's hands and put it in my own hands by showing up authentically for myself and loving myself in a way that, hopefully leads me to a partner or a person who I can work on these things with, someone who I can grow with. I'm not sure that I want a long-term partner forever or anything, but it's just something that I've started to recognize in myself. But I don't think that it's a one-off. I don't think I'm the only one who's struggling with this within our current culture. I think that right now something that I'm hearing a lot is that there is a culture of loneliness, and that loneliness, part of what's producing that effect is social media and our disconnection from others. I think people are struggling, or at least people my generation, people like Gen Z, are struggling to make connections because it's a little bit harder to make a connection in person than it is to make a connection online. And when it comes to romance in my love life, I'm just not an online dating kind of girl. I have tried it before and it's never really been successful. I feel like a lot of dating websites are usually for hookups, and that's just not my cup of tea. But I'm trying to challenge myself and put myself out there and, be a player in the field, not to play other people, but to actually put myself out there and try to find what I like, who I like, and who I want to spend time with. And in order to do that, Dr. Emily Morris brings up a really important point that you really have to find what your pleasure thieves are, what is taking your joy away from you, or what's making it hard for you to connect with other people. And so I haven't only worked on that in this week with, trying to be more mindful while I'm watching others, but, I'm an active participant in therapy and in caring for myself and in showing up for community care. And I know that by doing these things, it doesn't solve my problem right now in the here and now. Like, it's not going to magically make the right person appear for me, but through consistent work and a little bit of luck, I think that self-acceptance will help me find a person who accepts me for who I am, and someone I can accept for who they are, and someone I can learn and grow with. But the biggest obstacle is not being connected to myself and not being connected to my world and being aware of what's happening around me. And remembering to have realistic role models for my body and for my life, and that everything that we see in media is not always the most authentic or real version of someone else. So to compare ourselves to that is a form of self-harm and self-abuse, that if we really want to compare ourselves to someone, which I don't think is necessary, but I think it's part of human nature to want to do that, we should be comparing ourselves to the people that we see in our everyday environment, the people we see walking down the street, in a cafe, at the library, people that we interact with, we talk with, not people that we don't know, will never meet. We don't actually know anything about them besides the way that their body looks. We don't know how or why their body looks the way that it looks. Does it look that way because they've had plastic surgery? Does it look that way because they're on some insane diet? Is that just naturally how that person looks, something that's genetically unachievable because we don't all share the same genetics? Just really having some nuance and patience when it comes to dealing with a comparison-based society and love and intimacy. Yeah, that's really been my goal this week. Last week I took some time off from making videos because I was at a festival and it was my birthday. And I really struggled with coming up with a video idea this week. So if you all have any ideas of anything you would like me to talk about or anything that I could deep dive into, I would definitely really appreciate some feedback in that category. I'm going to keep being curious and looking for things to talk about and challenging myself to make videos even when I feel like maybe I don't have something that's that important to say, or maybe it's not as cohesive as I would like it to be, because I think in order to be successful on this platform, it takes continually showing up and being consistent. And I want to build an interactive audience base with the people who watch my videos. So if there's anything you've got on your mind that you feel like you'd like me to talk about or do some deep diving or some thinking on, just let me know. Thank you so much for showing up to watch this video. If you like what I had to say, please give my video a like or a comment, or subscribe if you feel like that's something you would like to do. If you don't feel like doing any of those things, that's okay. Thank you for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you next Sunday.